You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Jeremy Jacob, what's going on, brother?
Oh, I'm good, man.
Hey, I'm super excited to have you here. You are the owner of Evolve Human Optimization Labs.
You got it right.
And what was the other one? Float.
Float Wellness Spa.
Okay, I just learned that today.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, when I first got turned on to you, I was talking to Nick in Austin. I had him on a couple of episodes ago, and we were talking about recovery and how people get injured, and those guys are pushing a lot of weight, and it's probably not weight that regular humans were intended to push. So I was talking to him, and I was like, is it a matter of time before you get injured or something, you tear a muscle? And according to those guys, they say, no, it's all about recovery. And so in that podcast, we were talking, and I said, what do you guys do for recovery? And the first thing they said was Evolve. So tell people what Evolve is.
Yeah, so we're really proud of the fact that, and when I say we, it's my wife and I, we're doing this together. We invented the concept of Evolve. So it's the first facility of its kind in the world. You know, when I thought of the idea, I had this light bulb moment. I got like full body chills, and I was like, that's the shit. That's the way this needs to be done. And so I immediately went home and Googled it, and I was like, nobody is doing this. We'd had Float open for 5 years, and it's been super successful. San Antonio's been awesome. And I was not looking to open another business. I was like, happy with where we were, but I had this concept, and I was like, I have to do this, or I'll kick myself later if I don't open this, because eventually somebody's going to do it. So the concept around Evolve is we kind of fill the gap between spas and physical therapy. You and I were talking about getting old, being over 40.
Yeah.
You know, I strained my elbow, and Orosity is amazing. Orosti's helped me a lot with like shoulder injuries and different things, but those aches and pains become more frequent when you get over 40. And I wanted something that I could use for maintenance. And I saw what was out there. Most workout recovery or spas, you know, you're booking appointments and you're having to pay for each service. And I was like, this isn't how people use these services. And coming from the spa industry, I knew that there had to be a better way to provide these things that need to be used 2 or 3 times a week. So a lot of the thought process was around, you know, I believed in things like saunas and cold plunges, and we know that they work, but most people don't have access to them in the way they need to be used. So the whole concept around Evolve is you don't have to book an appointment, so you can show up at any time. You were talking about how you'll run late, but you're able to just pop in, check it out. That's one of the big barriers, where if you've got to book an appointment and plan a few days out in advance, people sometimes just won't do that because we're all busy. So open access, nobody's ever done that before, because it changes the way the whole center operates. And so we planned it from the beginning, and then making it to where you can access multiple modalities and setting a price point where people can use it regularly and recurring. And so, you know, with a sauna, the science shows if you sauna 2 or 3 times a week, you can reduce your all-cause mortality by 30-40%.
Really?
You know, they did a study in Europe where they do a lot of saunas. Like in Finland, they'll say sauna. So
my wife called the one I got into the iguana sauna, because I guess it just heats you up and not necessarily the air inside the.
Yeah, so that's the infrared. We've got both, and I think they both have great benefits, and I didn't want to just have one. You know, you'll get diehards for one or the other. They'll say this, you get all the benefits from this one, and the other one's not good. I think they both have a place, and we, you know, looking at things like that, we wanted people to be able to use these things 2 or 3 times a week. But if you're having to book an appointment every time you come in, and you're paying for each visit, it's costly, and it's not very convenient.
Yeah.
So we completely changed that with the Evolve model. Essentially, when you come in, you have access to everything, and we've got everything you'll find in a pro locker room. We've had pro athletes come in. We had a guy that was a lineman for the Raiders, and he was like, this is everything that we have in a pro locker room, and sometimes even more. But you have full access to it. You're not paying for each individual service. We also wanted to take the elitism out of the spa industry, and in biohacking too. That's a whole separate conversation. What is biohacking? And, it's all very elitist and really expensive. So we wanted to create a way that regular folks, everyday athletes can access this stuff, or, older folks that have arthritis or injuries that they need to just maintain. You can't go to the PT, twice a week
Sure.
to maintain that stuff. So we wanted to give them a format in a way that it was affordable and accessible. And I don't think anybody's ever done it as well as what we do.
It's funny that you say that because my wife, I was telling you about some of the aches and pains that she has. She had gone to a local, I guess, massage place.
Yeah.
And they kind of pulled her in on, hey, let's get you in and you pay this much a month and you get this many visits. And she never went, or she couldn't get an appointment for the times that she wanted. So she ended up paying every month for something that she wasn't using. And then she has this ridiculous amount of credits or things that she can go to that she's never going to use.
Right.
And she finally got to the point she's like, hey, I can give you one every 6 weeks. Here's one, go right now. I'm going to cancel because it just didn't work out for her schedule. Right. And a lot of times for folks that are busy or working or whatever, you don't know that you have time till all of a sudden you have time.
Right.
And one thing that I thought was super cool, because I looked you guys up. I think I follow you on Instagram. And when I got there, I didn't know what to expect. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm a weirdo. I get anxiety about places and going places. And it was super calm. It was super laid back. Even the guests there were relaxed. It's when you walk in there, it was very calming. And I try, as I get older, I try and do things that relax me, right? Yeah. And I'm not always the best at it. But yesterday I was sitting in the infrared, and I'm a fat, sweaty guy. I'm a sweat no matter what. So I'm sitting in there and I'm sweating, and I found myself, it's dark, right? You keep things kind of dark with lighting, colorful lighting in different places. And I found myself really relaxing. And I found myself not paying attention to things around me. I was focused more on my breathing. And these are all things that I struggle with doing at home.
Right.
But it was interesting because when the atmosphere changed, my mentality toward relaxing changed.
Right.
And it kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a no-brainer for most people, but to me it was kind of like, oh, I can't. There's things at home that drive me crazy. The dogs and chores and things that have to happen. And it was almost like having to take yourself out of that element, put yourself in another element to really kind of decompress. And that was cool.
That's exactly what we were shooting for. There's a couple of thoughts for me. It was like, we were very intentional about the environment. We wanted to, between the lighting, the music, the way that people interact with the space, we wanted to create a place where people were comfortable. I mean, we have people falling asleep in there. They're just passed out in a massage chair or doing leg compression, and I'm like, man, if somebody's so comfortable they can sleep in here, then we're doing something right. Yeah. And I think it's also important for people to get outside of their home or their office to do that mental recovery, because that's a huge thing we push. You probably saw we have 3 or 4 devices that are specific to mental wellness.
I didn't get a chance to use that one that was next to the sauna. I think they called it like a Pandora Star or something. Yeah,
light therapy. Yeah, we used to use a Pandora Star. We have a new device, but that thing's powerful. Yeah, it can be intense. I like to joke that it's like a sober psychedelic trip, because it can be very psychedelic.
Really?
Yeah, it's a light that flickers at specific patterns. You actually view it with your eyes closed, and there's this little, since a lot of folks are just listening, it's a small device, and it's got 14 LED lights, and they flicker sometimes where you can barely even see that they're flickering. And behind your eyelids, that information is translated into shapes and colors a lot of times, so it can be very psychedelic. But really what's happening is our brains are drawn toward frequencies. So we function in different brainwave patterns depending on the situation. So a beta brainwave pattern is kind of your standard operating, baseline brainwave pattern. We might be sitting in beta right now, or gamma, which is above that when you're in a unique situation or something that's intense. those brainwave patterns could creep up into gamma, which is really fast. And then if you're kind of meditating and you're focusing on your breath, you slow it down, you're going to be in alpha. Below that is theta brainwave pattern, which is kind of like your REM sleep, and then delta is your deep sleep. So a lot of time when you have your watch and it's measuring your sleep, it's looking at those brainwave patterns. So deep sleep is going to be delta. So this device that we have, it's gonna send a steady signal to your brain through your eyes. That's like like say we want you to relax. It'll be a steady theta or alpha pattern. And so your brain wants to match that, so it will calm you down into that within minutes. So really? You'll feel calmer within minutes of that. We also have the chair actually vibrates with that. So you've got light, audio, and vibration that's all to one frequency, and your body just matches that. You just feel immediately relaxed. We also have the brain tap, which is a similar type of thing. It's got the visual part. But it's also got like guided meditation and breath work in the headphones, so you can do that in a massage chair. We've got a place where you can do like Tai Chi or yoga that's guided on a screen. So lots of different ways. One of the things we wanted to do is we didn't want to just build an athletic recovery center, because a lot of people, most of us don't consider ourselves athletes, but workout recovery is a great thing for most people if you're active at all. But then also, the athletes at the highest level, that's the stuff that they're considering that your regular everyday athletes aren't really looking at. Cortisol, stress hormones are terrible for muscle growth. So if you're hitting the gym and you're trying to grow muscle, but you've got a stressful job and you're just going all the time and your sleep is shitty, you're not gonna perform at your best. So
I think that's where most of us live.
Yeah. Nowadays we're so overstimulated. I mean, we know all the stuff about social media. So our brains are our nervous system is stimulated all the time, and we'll talk about float tanks and how that can pull you out of that state too. But in our space, so we really wanted everybody that's come in to feel calm, to be able to do things to put you in a different place, whether that's a massage chair, the light therapy. And then we've also got things that can bring you up. So like a cold plunge, you're going to get a boost of more of those adrenaline and those type of things. And they've seen that if you do that intentionally, it's good for you. It'll boost your immune system, things like that. So the thing I love about it is no matter where you're at in your life, in your workouts, whatever else, we've got something for you. It's over 25 different services. We have something, because your needs are going to change every day. And so if you're having to plan 2 or 3 days out in advance and book an appointment for something, that may not be what you need that day, especially athletes like Austin and Nick. They tweak something starts to feel off, they need to go and work on that immediately. Or if they're doing, say we've got a basketball player that needs to do back-to-back games with just a day in between, you need cold immersion to restore those muscles so that you can perform again the next day. So It really is a one-stop shop for all those different things, and we wanted that broadness so that no matter when you come in, we've got something that's going to help you.
Yeah, I was in that sauna yesterday, and that's the first time I've ever been in one, and it was interesting. And I'm probably going to ask you things that make me sound like an idiot because I have no clue. But I was sitting in that thing, and I told you I have some constant back tension and muscle pain. And just relaxing. I guess your muscles are warming up, your joints, your bones, and it was interesting because I think I was in there 15 minutes or so. So like I said, we got there late, so I was trying to do what we needed to do and get out. And I tell you what, it was 15 minutes of not being in pain. I mean, there's times where I'm sitting there trying to relax, and my heel's hurting or my knees hurting or my lower back or tension in the shoulders. And man, it felt amazing. Actually, I'm going to do that again tomorrow.
I'm glad to hear that, man. Yeah, I know. The simplest way that we try and break it down is heat's going to increase blood flow, cold is going to restrict blood flow. So depending on the nature of the pain, the injury,
you're healing when blood's flowing, though, right?
What's that?
You're healing when your blood's flowing through those muscles?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and sometimes restricting blood flow. So if you've got a knee that's inflamed and you need to use that the next day for a game, and it's those tendons or that joint that's inflamed, you may use cold therapy on that to reduce the inflammation so that you can get better movement. Sometimes cold is the treatment, but sometimes heat is. So one thing I love about our facility is we've got cryocompression for joints. So we've got elbow, shoulder, knee, ankle, full leg.
Now, when you say cryo, what is cryo exactly?
Cryo is just saying cold.
Cold?
You know, a lot. The cryotherapy industry kind of took over that term. That could be a separate conversation because I got real strong feelings around cryo. But I mean, technically, a cold plunge or an ice bath could be considered a cryotherapy because really, cryo just means cold, and it's a therapy. So.
Well, that was a cool thing. She showed us that. We didn't touch it, but it was, and keep talking about it here in a second, but it was something that was, if you don't think that you can handle the cold plunge, it was more of a focus type device.
Yeah, because sometimes if somebody's got a specific thing, like we had a guy that had tennis elbow, and that's an inflammation of the tendons and ligaments around the elbow. And if you just put an ice pack on it, you're going to warm that up in 5 to 10 minutes. Then you got to get another one, and it's just one area that. Whereas this device that we have, it's going to get the entire elbow cold, and we can do a 20 or 30 minute session, and it's going to stay cold the entire time. So that's a real treatment. It's not just a Band-Aid. So for him, that actually knocked that inflammation down enough. He'd been dealing with it for about 6 months. He did 2 or 3 treatments in 1 week. And it hasn't bothered him since. Wow. You know, he's a friend of mine too, so we stay in touch. But so for certain injuries, cold is the right remedy. For other things, you want heat. Heat and vibration can both be good because that's going to stimulate blood flow to that area. Infrared saunas are really unique because for those that aren't familiar, it's not really new technology, but it's something that's just becoming really popular. So infrared saunas heat the tissues directly instead of heating the room. Mm. The cool thing about that is if you go in the traditional sauna, it's going to feel intense. A lot of times your face and your head are going to get really hot. So if you're new to it, you may only last 5 or 10 minutes in a traditional sauna, and then you got to get out and rest. We always want people to be careful and not push past their limits because that can be dangerous in the heat.
Sure.
Whereas in infrared, the room's not super hot and stuffy. You notice it was a little warm in there, but it didn't feel like claustrophobic or stuffy. But
well, that was the thing she told me. She said, infrared, you'll be able to go in there and you'll be able to breathe easier.
Yeah.
And fat guys like to breathe, man. So so that was my first choice.
Well, that's what I love about it is like anybody can go in there and, you can adjust the temperature in there too. They're personal booths. But you're going to start to feel your body warm up and you're going to start sweating, but you're not necessarily uncomfortable. And so what that's doing, and infrared heat waves can also penetrate the skin. So you're actually heating the muscle, the tendons, the ligaments. You're heating all those tissues while you're in there. And that blood flow, that heat definitely has healing properties. So we've got that device. We also have our red light therapy. We've got full body red light.
What is that?
So red light, it was one of those things, the first time I saw it, I was like, that's bullshit. Like what is red light going to actually do for the body? So
it keeps chicken warm, doesn't it?
So that's probably infrared heat. So the red light, it's one of these things.
So the red light's not infrared?
No, they're similar. So basically, when you look at spectrums of light, on one side you've got UV, and that's damaging. You want to stay out of UV. Obviously, we want to get sunlight, but the UV is the damaging part. Mm-hmm. And then as you move across that spectrum, on the other end is like microwaves. So these are really short waves, and that also, when you get into like X-ray microwaves, those can be damaging. But the space in between those things is where they're safe wavelengths. Like our bodies emit infrared heat. If you put your hand right next to your skin, you can feel that we're emitting heat. Yeah. So that's technically infrared heat. So infrared is a very safe wavelength. You've also got right next to that is red light. You've got near and far infrared. So there's a spectrum in the middle where the wavelengths are safe and they can actually be, I would say, healing, or they can be a remedy. So with red light, infrared you can't see, but with red light you can actually see that, and we visually see it as red light. But basically it's a spectrum of light that can, again, penetrate the skin. I was listening to the Huberman Lab podcast. He was talking about light therapy, and they feel like it gets all the way into the bone. So for red light specifically, it's going to stimulate your mitochondria. So our energy production system inside the cell, it's going to stimulate that so you can produce more energy. I know some of our really high performing athletes that are training daily, they feel just like a little bit of boost of energy, like they're less exhausted. It's also going to warm the tissues because our device is red light and near infrared together. So you're going to warm the tissues. Again, warmth is blood flow, so that can reduce inflammation. And then there's some side benefits. It can boost testosterone. It can help with hair loss and
you're speaking my language on that now.
There you go.
So when you go into that, is that something where, and I'm not being an idiot right now, I will in a minute, but is that something where you get in and you need as much skin contact with the light, or so you get naked?
Yeah, you do get naked.
I told my wife, she said, you don't get naked. So it's a skin
We
surface.
have a door lock, so that's why we put that in a private room. A lot of our space is really open because we want people to be able to hang out and spend time with friends and family in the space. But red light, well, I mean, we've seen couples go in there together. They can stand under the red light together. But for the most part, you go in there, you lock the door, and you do want maximum skin exposure. And, if we're just talking like for guys, if you have gonads exposed, that's where you can get that boost of testosterone. There's been some studies on that. So, you do want maximum skin exposure. And for my wife, she says that she can see a difference in her skin because it's actually going to stimulate collagen growth. Collagen is what makes your skin smoother.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of spas now. They just have red lights just for the face. Ours gets your face and your full body. So it's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. We saw that, and I didn't quite understand it. Initially, now on your website, you give a lot of information. I'm not a fan of reading, so my wife read it on the way over there. But for people that are going to go there for the first time, I guess you need to kind of think about how maybe what you want to do, right? If you're going to do a sauna and a cold plunge, you might want to go in some swim trunks or something similar. If you're going to sit in the chairs, dress in regular, maybe workout clothes or something. Now there's a restroom to change in, but you kind of maybe you want to take 2 sets of clothing, and we did, that's kind of one thing that we took with it. But actually I called the guys to see what I needed to take. So it kind of gave me a heads up, but there's just different stations and different things. So you will need to take a change of clothing if you want to get in the plunge or you want to get in the sauna, as opposed to maybe sitting in one of the massage chairs.
Yeah. We usually say just bring a bathing suit and something to hydrate. If you want to bring your own bottle of water or, whatever you want to bring to drink. So, but that's it. We try to make it so you don't have to plan too much when you're coming in. So we do provide towels. And that experience can be really different. Sometimes we have a lot of folks that just use it as kind of like a spa. So they'll do the massage chairs, they'll do a sauna, maybe leg compression, because it's usually talked about for athletes, but it just feels good. It feels like
what
a
is
massage.
a leg compression?
So we've got Normatec is the big brand. That's what we have. It's the compression sleeves for that device are the legs, the hips, and the arms. A lot of places just have the legs. The hips are actually my favorite. And essentially what it's doing is it's squeezing the muscles, and by squeezing it's literally just pushing blood flow into it. And these devices actually do it sequentially, so it's going to say go from the feet to the calves, quads, and so it's pushing blood flow into the muscles, which can help with recovery, but it also just feels good. It feels kind of like a massage because it's enough pressure and we can adjust the pressure, but it feels kind of like that squeezing. It just feels good.
It sounds like maybe somebody with some circulation issues might be able to benefit from something like that too.
They have seen, like edema, folks that are dealing with edema, say from diabetes or just poor circulation. They have seen that can help, especially with, and even calf compression. We have a device that's just compression for the calf. Our calves, lower extremities, can regulate the blood flow through the whole body. Since your legs and feet are the furthest extremity, if you do compression on your calves, it'll actually increase circulation throughout the whole body. So calf compression can be pretty important. I was surprised, like compression garments, you see NBA players when they're showing up before or after game, a lot of times they're going to have they look like leggings and they'll have shorts on over them, but those are actually compression garments. So they've seen that can increase circulation marginally with something like that, maybe 5 to 10%. But compression overall can really help with circulation, and circulation is healing. Circulation is recovery.
Usually that's where, in addition to my back, usually it's my calves are always so tight. I mean, look what they're carrying around. So those are the tightest. And when I've gotten a massage or whatever, usually the down in the calf area, it's brutal.
That's when you squeal, right?
That's so bad. I squealed last night in the cold plunge too.
Yeah.
It was amazing because there was me and another gentleman that had a little bit of a rough time. And for whatever reason, the women were killing it.
Yep.
They get in there super calm. They do their 5 minutes. And then they're out, and me and the other guy, we finished, but we weren't as.
We joke, the staff. We joke that like the tougher the dude, or the person, the harder the time they have in the cold plunge. And it's funny because like we've also had father-daughter challenges. Like dads will come in and say it's a young lady that's volleyball or softball high level athlete, and they're in there for recovery. We'll always try and get the dads to cold plunge with them, and
they're big enough to put 2 people in.
Yeah. We've fit 3 people in, 3 small people, and but the daughters always win. The
Really?
dads always they always have to get out 2 or 3 minutes in, and the daughters always do the 5 minutes. So I don't know what it is, but ladies definitely handle the cold better.
Well, I think when a male experiences pain, if it's the same kind of experience that the woman's going through, I think scientifically the male's pain is 20 times greater than what the female experiences. So that's what I told my wife anyway. I don't know. But
The ladies' side, as they'll say, they're just tougher than us. I don't know. They gotta bear children, so I don't know if there's an actual like physiological mechanism there where they can just tolerate pain more. Endurance athletes, female endurance athletes, they can handle a tremendous amount of pain. So,
it's 5 minutes, so 5 minutes is a long time, but 5 minutes isn't a long time.
Feels like a long time,
And so it was interesting because my wife would shiver. I'm larger than her, so when I was in there, the cold really got to like my extremities, my toes, my heels, my ankles. That's where it was like you could really feel it being intense in those areas. Yeah. But once you get out of there, it was so stupid because we're in the truck going home, and we've just been working and going home and not doing anything. We work on our activity, but we're not where we need to be, right? So we left there and we looked at each other and we both went, I feel like I did something.
Yeah, you feel good, right?
It felt good. It felt good to do the heat. It felt good to do the cold. Even when the cold was a little bit painful, once you were out of it and you start warming up a little bit in your extremities or your lower your toes and your ankles and your feet, it actually felt really good.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. My head goes a few different places. One, when people have pain, it's like the sharper pain is usually in the fingers, the feet, sometimes ankles. I hear my wife, oddly, sometimes she'll get pain on the bottom of the feet. But what we've noticed is if we start to talk to people about that, we say, okay, do you have an injury or is there something where you tend to have tension or pain in that area? And they're usually like, yeah. So what the cold is doing is it's pointing out these are the areas where you might be lacking circulation or you might have, it could be scar tissue, it could be something like that. So that the cold is pointing to that, saying this is what you need to work on. And if you do cold therapy consistently, they've shown that you can actually increase circulation to those areas. So the pain will decrease. Like even with their hands, they've done things where you stick your hands in an ice bucket. You do that 2 or 3 times a week for a month, you're not going to feel that pain anymore, and it's actually increasing blood vessels in those extremities. So that can be really healing, but you can move past that. The other thing that's really big for me is like cold plunging isn't just about, I think the broadest conversation is do cold plunge to help with muscle recovery. That's not only that's very limiting for what it is. For me, the psychological benefits are massive. You get a huge boost of like serotonin and dopamine in the flow in the cold plunge. I think it's 250% increase in dopamine, equal to cocaine.
Wow.
So that feeling y'all had afterward is that positivity. A lot of that's like the chemistry that happens because you're shocking your body. That's like the natural response to cold water. I also like the idea that a lot of times people come in, they're like, there's no way I can do that. And then they get in, we coach them through it. I'm not a good coach. I'm a shitty coach for the cold plunge because I'm just kind of like, just tough it out.
I know,
like,
it hurts, right? It hurts, right?
just do it. Like, don't bitch about it. Just do it. But my staff, they're much kinder people. So Amber, Jack, Des, they're all amazing at. They'll get down there and they'll look you in the eye and they'll be like, all right, we're gonna do this. Breathe. Breath is hugely important in the cold plunge, and they'll coach you through it, and they'll be really nice about it. So we've had people that came in, they were like, there's no way I'm gonna cold plunge. They'll get in the water. We'll get them through that 5 minutes, and then you just did something. You did something you didn't think you could do, and there's not many times in our lives anymore where it's like, oh, that's really hard, and I'm gonna power through it, and then afterwards you're like, shit, I did that. I feel good about that. So there's a mental side of that, like grit, determination. That mental fortitude is something you have to earn. Like, you can't. We all know, like people that are born into an easy lifestyle, it's very rare that they become mentally strong, tough people.
Sure.
Our adversity is what makes us stronger. So it's one of those little things where it's not a big thing in life, but when you do that and you come out the other side a little bit stronger, then the next time you have a challenge in your life, you might be a little bit more confident, or you might feel a little bit more resilient. So those are the types of things, the conversation around cold plunge that we like to have, where it can be good for muscle recovery. It's actually for folks that are trying to build muscle, you actually don't want to cold plunge 3-4 hours afterward. We don't know the exact time because those studies are still happening, but you're restricting blood flow. So blood flow, pushing nutrients and blood into muscles is how they grow and recover. So a lot of times we tell, if we got a power lifter, unless they're needing to perform the next day, you might need to reduce inflammation around that muscle to perform again. I saw a really interesting study. I was at the Human Performance Summit, and they were talking about these pro soccer players in the UK, football. And so they actually showed an x-ray of this guy who, highest level athlete. He had damage in his quads, and they could see, like fluid seepage in the muscle, swelling, all this stuff. And he needed to perform again. I don't know if it was during like playoffs or something like that, like a day or two later. So they did some intense cold plunging, like a few sessions back to back, and then they showed another x-ray, and it greatly reduced the inflammation, muscle soreness, and he was able to perform better the next day and probably prevented an injury. But, if we've got a power lifter, a bodybuilder, a strongman, and they just got done with a heavy workout where they're trying to grow muscle, we'll actually push them away from that. That's when they actually want a sauna. So sauna has been proven to increase human growth hormone, increase testosterone. You're pushing blood flow into the muscles. So immediately post-workout, you want to do sauna. Cold plunge is good. Right now, the best estimates are like 4 to 6 hours out. You're good to cold plunge after a heavy strength workout. It's a little different for endurance athletes. It doesn't seem to be a negative effect. So a lot of times with our strength athletes, we're going to say next day or your recovery, your day off. That's when it's good to do that. Although, sorry, I might get into some real nerdy shit here.
This is the information I like.
The science is the stuff that I'm really excited about, and I'm not a doctor, physical therapist. I just really geek out on these studies, and we want to recommend the best stuff, the best science. So there are a few small studies that show if you do a cold plunge and you cool the muscles before a strength workout, you can actually perform better. Like I said, those studies were pretty small and limited, but there's some good evidence that if you cool the muscles and then go and do a powerlifting strength workout, you're going to perform a little bit better, maybe push a little bit harder. And then that's where we would say, do sauna afterwards. So there are some protocols that we can recommend. And all that science is still growing, but it's really interesting. And so we always try and push people in the right direction based on the best information that's out there.
That's awesome, man. In addition to all that information, one thing I want people to understand is I got a lot of quirks, man. And like I told you, I get a little anxiety. I like, getting into the place and new places. And one thing that I thought was super cool was, and you even say it on your website, it's at your own pace,
Yep.
right? So you don't feel the need to go in there and it was actually, and it may have been a slow day because it was a Friday. I'm sure people are out doing things, but you had access to everything.
Yeah.
And it was nice to be able to go in and kind of, for me, at first, it was kind of like new and interesting, and I thought it was cool. But then slowly I found myself thinking, okay, well, what do I want to work on? What hurts me right now?
Yeah.
And you slowly start saying, okay, well, maybe I need to get into one of these chairs. Maybe we need to do the compression sleeves.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about your own health and then the issues that you're having.
Yeah.
And you can kind of, heavy metal, they always talk about programming, and it's almost like programming your own thing, but yet you still got people like Amber that can sit there and direct you. And she even sat with my wife when she was in the cold plunge and just helping her talk through it. And I could hear that. For me, I need to be left alone.
Right. Yeah.
I need everybody out of the way. Don't talk to me. And one thing that I'll go back to from what I said in the beginning was being able to be so uncomfortable that I was almost meditating.
Yeah.
Which is weird to say, I guess. But I was so uncomfortable in the sauna and I was so uncomfortable in the cold plunge that I was extremely relaxed, which was very weird to me, but
Yeah. No, I mean, I think now if anything good came out of COVID, people gain this awareness that we have to take charge of our health and wellness. And so we're seeing this want, this need. The thing that people get excited about is they get to come in, and each time they come in, they get to decide what they're going to do. If it's a day where you really need to rest, maybe you're just going to do calming things. If it's a day where you want a shot of energy, you'll do the cold plunge and maybe the light therapy that's up in that gamma frequency. So that's what I really love about it is each time you come in, you're not rushed. There's no appointments. You can spend as much time in the space. Now we just try and ask people to be mindful about do 20 minutes here and then go on to another thing. That way it keeps flowing. It's kind of like the gym. Like don't sit on the bench press all day.
You don't want to hog the 45 plates.
So there's a respect in the community, but there were all these question marks when we were opening, like, how is this going to work? Is it going to work? It was actually, honestly, it was just kind of scary because nobody had done this before. Mm-hmm. And I remember Amber was the first employee we had. It was me and her sitting there, and I was explaining to her how it was going to work. And she was like, but how do we know it's going to flow and it's going to work? And not everybody's going to want to do one thing. I'm like, you just have to have faith. So we just dove in and did it. And the most beautiful thing that came out of it is people utilize that space in a way, and we call it social wellness. Like now we've got people that, them and 2 or 3 of their friends have memberships, and they come together and they sit in a sauna together, and they're really spending time like having conversations and bonding, doing something healthy. And then they'll challenge each other in the cold plunge. Like, all right, who's doing the 39? Who's doing the 58? Because we have 3 different temperatures.
Yeah. Hey, don't jump into the 39.
I do not recommend doing that the first time.
Don't do it.
If you can get in that 39 the first time and do the 5 minutes, that's strong. But we have the 58 is the beginner. We want everybody to be safe and stay within their limits. So do the 58, and then what my protocol now is I like to do a step down. So I'll do the 58. We can do contrast where you go from the cold plunge to the sauna. There's some cool benefits so it's vasoconstriction, vasodilation. So you go in the cold plunge, the body is gonna close those blood vessels, and everything's gonna kind of go into this like hibernation mode. And then when you go into the sauna, all that opens up. So it's actually a workout for your cardiovascular system. We think of the heart as the thing that pumps all of our blood. Our veins and arteries actually play a part in that. And when you do contrast therapy, it's like a little mini workout for your cardiovascular system.
I've heard that before, that your veins and arteries are actually flexing.
Yeah,
maybe?
There's like a pulsing.
Yeah, pulsing. There you go.
Yeah, it's wild. I just learned that in this journey myself. So it's really wild. And again, there's really good long-term studies that show using saunas. The best number we have right now is about 57 minutes a week. Getting in a real sauna can improve all-cause mortality by 20-30%. They did a 20-year study tens of thousands of people in Europe. So this is really good scientific information. So saunas for me, like the science is there, we're sold on it. Cold plunges, I feel like if you look, the thing that's really interesting to me is like this isn't a fad, because every culture has a version of cold immersion. All these ancient cultures. In Japan, it's called onsen. They'll use cold water and saunas, or cold water and mineral baths, things like that. You've got in Northern Europe, you've got like Russian bathhouse, banya, things like that. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of cultural history behind cold and also heat. Every culture also has a version of the sauna. So I think in some ways we're bringing back things that we have this, just awareness that are it's good for our bodies. But yeah, don't start in the 39.
No. Well, what was funny was my wife knows what she married. But, Amber was very helpful. Very cute lady. My wife's friends were there. Very cute ladies. My wife was there. She's a cute lady. And so I was there. And so I thought, I'm going to jump in the 30 degree, whatever it was, 39. And stuck my hand in it. And immediately my brain went, holy shit. And so then I went to the middle one. And that felt just as cold as the first one. And then they convinced me to go into the 59 degree. And I'm glad I didn't attempt those other two immediately. Yeah. Maybe eventually work my way in that direction, but man, it was plenty cold.
Yeah, we have people that started out at 58, and then they do that for a month or two, and then they step down into the 47, 48, and then eventually the 39. We got folks now that are trying to push outside that 5 minutes in the 39. We usually try and be like, all right, stay within the 5 minutes. But if it's slow and they're building up and they're being really safe about it, we'll let them creep past that. But they've seen that your body will acclimate in 5 to 6 sessions to the cold. This last winter, I didn't wear a jacket. Like, it doesn't get cold enough here for me because I was in the cold plunge 2 or 3 times a week. I actually went to Poland in March. You familiar with Wim Hof?
No. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the guy that... Yes.
Iceman.
You explain it, because I know who he is, but you can probably explain it.
I'll geek out on this shit, so I'll try and keep it really,
real quick,
concise.
I think when I saw a video on him, I think he'd lost family members. And so he convinced himself that he didn't want to live any longer and put himself in a river or something.
Did I blow it? Yeah, no, you're right on. So, and this is public information. He's got some great YouTube videos. His Instagram is great. I've been a follower of his for like 8 years now. I actually went to one of his events up in Dallas in 2017 with a good friend of mine. And so yeah, Wim, his wife committed suicide.
That's what it was.
And it was a devastating event. They had 4 kids, I think, and it just destroyed him. And he was dealing with the depression and the mental anguish of that. And he went to the cold. He describes it as this instinctual thing, like he just needed to go to the cold. So he's from Europe. He's in Amsterdam, and so he just went and sat in a cold river, and then he got out and he felt a little bit better, because now we know it's great for depression. It balances your hormones out. And so the next day he went again, and I think over time he just started doing it more. And he had a history of practicing yoga and breath work. There's a lot of ancient techniques like breath of fire, things like that. And he started developing this breath work that helped him manage the cold. And so you fast forward over a period of I think 10 years or something. Eventually he became known as the Iceman. Yeah. And he set these world records for sitting in ice longer than anyone. So we're talking over 2 hours, to the point where he's heating the ice up. And throughout that journey, he developed this breath work, which is now considered the Wim Hof method. So the Wim Hof method, if I'm remembering correctly, is breath work, cold immersion, and I believe it's consistency for the other thing, because that's really the key. So he talks a lot about you do the breath work so that you can withstand the cold. He always preaches respect for the cold, because you have to be careful. it really takes a lot longer than what people think to really get hurt in the cold. You'd have to be in that 39 for probably 15, 20, 30 minutes before you could even potentially look at frostbite or anything like that. But at the same time, you want to be really respectful. So the breath work, essentially it ignites your inner fire. So inner fire is part of their brand. And you're increasing your internal combustion engine. So you're firing all that up. So when you get in the cold, it feels a lot less intense. So this last March, I went to Poland, and he had this Wim Hof event, like excursion. I was super excited. I wasn't gonna do it, and then my wife, she was like, "Just go and do it." No, she didn't go. Okay. It's not her thing. She I can get her. She did the 39 for 5 minutes the other day, so she's coming around to it. But initially, she didn't even want a cold plunge at all. But I love it. So when I went to Poland, they had us doing crazy shit. Like we had to hike up this mountain. It took us 3 hours, and it was literally like blizzard. When we got to the top, you could only see about 10 yards in front of you, and it was like I think in Fahrenheit, they were telling us everything in Celsius. So I think it was like 15 degrees up there, and there's snow blowing sideways, and we're only in shorts, like boots with the ice spikes on there and shorts, and we hiked up there for 3 hours. And these are just regular folks like me. Like, we're not endurance athletes or I had been sitting in the cold a lot to prep for that. And then they had us sitting in ice baths in 30-degree weather for 10 minutes, things like that. But we're also doing the breath work in between, and we're really careful to heat up the body afterwards. But it's a really cool experience. It's one of the best trips of my life, and made some great friends there. But the Wim Hof method is something that I recommend to everybody to try. He's got some videos on YouTube where people can just play around with the breath. He'll guide you through the basics of it. And then his app is tremendous.
Can you spell his last name or his name?
Oh, it's just H-O-F.
H-O-F?
Yeah. Wimhof. Yeah, okay. Wim Hof. Like, people that are like big Wim Hof fans will be kind of like CrossFitters. They will talk about it all day. So be warned, if you start a conversation about Wim Hof with some people, will be super annoying about it. But
you know what's interesting is I don't quite understand the correlation between the cold and mental health, because I want to say, I don't know if it was with him or maybe she had done it separately, but there was another girl somewhere in Europe that was struggling with depression, and she started doing that. And I don't know if she started with him or if she kind of did her own thing, but she would start to go into cold rivers, frozen over rivers, and they would literally cut ice at the top, pull it out, and she would dive into that. And it really helped her deal with her depression, which was amazing. I mean,
no, I've heard if you're on the Facebook group for Wim Hof, you'll hear people all day talk about, especially mental health. You get into stuff about like it boosts your immune system. They did a wacky study with him. I like talking about this because it's kind of interesting. So after he did these events where he's pushing the limits of cold exposure that people thought you couldn't push past, some studies or some scientists wanted to do a study on him. So he was making all these broad claims about how he was healthier and he was boosting his immune system. And so they're like, all right, we're going to test it. So one of the ones, they had him in a hospital and they injected him with endotoxin, which is basically like dead bacteria. I think it's like literally like dead E. coli. So your immune system is going to respond to it. So you get this immune system response, but it's not actually dangerous. You're not actually going to get sick from it, because these are, I hope I'm explaining this right, but it's basically like dead bacteria. But they had done it to 100 people, and everybody has the same response. They get sweats, they get a fever. Your body responds to it like it's a bacteria or a virus. But then within a few hours, all that calms down because your body figures out it's not dangerous. But for him, when they injected him with endotoxin, he basically, his body started to respond, and then he stopped the process of that inflammation response.
Really?
And he did that through the breath work. And so the scientists were like, that's really interesting, but you're just kind of this special, unique guy. You've got something genetically that makes you special, unique. And he was like, bullshit. Give me 14 people. I'll train them for 5 days, and we'll come back and we'll replicate it. And they did. So that's the kind of really interesting stuff around the Wim Hof method that we get excited about, because they proved that the combination of breath work and the cold exposure, now we've proven that it does suppress an immune or an inflammation response. It does boost your immune system. You're producing more white blood cells, that type of stuff. One thing I really love about that organization is 30% of all the profit goes back toward research. So
cool.
They're trying to show the scientific community that this is a real thing. And personally for me, the breath work really helps with managing stress and anxiety, and then the cold, just the feeling you have when you get out of it, and it is extremely powerful. So yeah, especially on depression and anxiety, I don't know if there's anything better other than a float tank.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because going back to my experience yesterday, I talked to you about my breathing changing and my focus, and it's funny because I'm a fat guy, right? So I'm a shallow breather in general, and I find myself every now and then when I'm focused and I'm kind of paying attention to what's going on, I'll make it a point to take several really deep breaths just to get my oxygen level in my blood up, and because I'm a shallow breather. If I'm working and I'm doing something in several hours, my oxygen levels are low. And so it was interesting because focusing on being uncomfortable and focusing on just, what do I need to get through these next few minutes? I need to breathe.
Right.
And that's where all my mental energy went to, was just my breathing. And so, man, I was a fan of it when we left yesterday. But one thing you said that's interesting, and I want to reiterate to people, is you talked about going to the Wim Hof deal, and it was just regular people, right?
Yeah.
And I talked to people about heavy metal, and it's like they have some high performers, but there's a lot of just regular people.
Right.
And in your facility, you cater to some high performers, but at the same time, just regular people, man.
Right.
And you don't have to go, well, I can't go to Evolve because I'm not a high performer. It's just trying to feel better, It stresses from work, stresses from your children, stresses from, your marriage or whatever it is. Just going and taking a few minutes, giving it to yourself, say, hey, I'm going to take an hour. Hey, I'm going to take 2 hours. I'm going to take 30 minutes, and I'm just going to go and just fucking relax.
That's exactly it. Yeah, we wanted everybody to feel comfortable in that space, and that's something we've always wanted to do from our float center. We wanted to create a spa space where people feel comfortable.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, float is a whole different story, totally different business. So we opened Float Wellness Spa here in San Antonio in 2016. We were one of the first float centers. So San Antonio went from 0 to 6 in a year in 2016, 2017. And it was kind of during a time when there was a lot of news and conversation around sensory deprivation tanks. You go back to 2000s and nobody was talking about it at all. Interestingly, the float tanks have been around.
I think it's because of Stranger Things, man.
Stranger Things and Rogan. Yeah, Joe Rogan started talking about, he's for a while there, he was a broken record about the sensory deprivation tank. And
tell people what it is exactly, the benefits.
So it's a unique experience. So I'll just say, like, when you come into our float center at Float, you'll come in and you've got a private room. So there's a float tank in a private room. I always like to point that out, because we'll show you how everything works, but once you go into that space, you're in control of getting in and out of the tank, and it's a private experience. So when you get into a float tank, so you'll shower off before you get in. You get into a float tank. The water is actually only about 12, 14 inches deep. So it's pretty shallow, but it's 40% Epsom salt. So we will literally have to dump about 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt into the water to get the density up to where you float. You're completely buoyant. So usually the first question is, people are like, I can't float. Doesn't matter how dense you are, how big, how thin. Everybody floats. Like, I've literally dropped a bowling ball.
I float amazing, Jeremy.
And so, I've actually dropped a bowling ball into a float tank, and it floated.
Really?
Because the water is so dense. So it's very similar to the Dead Sea, or right around the same density. So if you've seen pictures of people in the Dead Sea, they can just lay, and they're fully supported. So in our float tanks, we actually measure. It's called specific gravity. We get the density just right, so the water line should fall midline throughout your body. So when you lay down, you should be able to completely relax all your muscles, and it's almost like you're laying on a mattress, but it's water. That solution is also heated to the exact temperature of your skin, which is called skin receptor neutral. It's 94 degrees. And so ideally, once you're comfortable in a float tank, your body is relaxed. You learn to kind of release your muscles, and your skin can no longer sense the change in temperature. So you can have this sensation that you're just floating in air.
So there's no, since you're in the salt water, there's no I guess point of contact, like if you were laying in a bed where you
Right.
might have your shoulder, you might be leaning a little bit to the left, you might be leaning a bit to the right. You don't have those points of contact, so it's literally and then when you hit the temperature, it's like being on nothing,
key.
huh?
Yeah. No, I've had
crazy.
moments in a float tank, and this is like another level. I always like to tell people, like, if you've listened to Joe Rogan talk about it, he'll get into the like, oh man, I was floating in a float tank and I was off in outer space, and I've felt that. It can be amazing, but you got to walk into it with like, it's going to be a journey. The first time you float, I always tell people, just have fun with it. Like, go in there, enjoy the feeling of the buoyancy. It's the only place on earth where you're weightless. And unless you get an opportunity to get on one of these rockets, to go out of space with one of these rich guys, that's the only other time you'll experience weightlessness, except in a float tank. So the first time, I just tell people, just have fun with it. Like, bounce around in there. Like, most people, like, you'll kind of float to one end of the pod and you'll push yourself off and you'll get to the other side.
So it's not enclosed?
It is enclosed.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got two different styles of tanks at float. So we've got what we call the pods, which look like a giant egg. They're just a lot bigger than what people think. The number one thing that people say is, I'm claustrophobic.
Yeah.
First of all, only 10% of the population is actually claustrophobic. Everybody just thinks like, I don't want to be in a coffin. It's not like that at all. If I'm laying in even the pods, which are a little bit smaller than the cabin, if I put my arm up above me, I can't even touch the ceiling.
And is it dark in there, or are there lights?
It starts out with lights. So once you're settled in, it has music and lights in the beginning, so you can get settled in and comfortable. The music's going to fade out, and then when you're ready, you're in control of the lights. The lights will usually dim on you, but there's a light switch in there. You can leave the lights on if you want. You can also leave the lid to the float tank open if you want. So that's why I always tell people, you're in control of everything in there. So if it's fear that's keeping you back from it, we've got a way that we can remove all those concerns so that you can experience it. The key is when you're in a float tank, the reason it's called sensory deprivation, which sounds negative, it's actually amazing because you're removing all stimulus to the body. And there's nowhere else you can do that. There's literally nowhere else on earth other than a float tank where you have zero sensory input, because we're talking about tactile, temperature, light, and sound. No input coming into the body. And the guy that invented this, John Lilly, was this like wild scientist. Like, he's had multiple journeys. He got into like UFOs and dolphins and all this stuff. But the first thing that he became famous
I was gonna say I knew the name.
He's a fucking character, man. Like, I love talking about John Lilly because, and there were people in the float industry that were like, oh, we need to like pull back from this John Lilly thing because he put people in float tanks on psychedelics and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, man, this is an interesting story. This guy invented this thing, and initially they were trying to understand what happens to our brain when you remove all input, all data. And this was in the 50s. They were like, will people go crazy? Will they, they didn't understand the mind enough to realize what would happen if you took away all input. They thought that the brain worked off of input. So he initially just experimented on himself because he didn't know it was safe. So for about 10 years as he was developing the float tank, he was just putting himself in there. And what he realized was he felt amazing. And I'll try and shorten the story. Eventually they came up with the version of floating that we have now. I got to meet I've met Glenn and Lee Perry at the float conference. These are the folks that, along with John Lilly, developed what we consider a float tank now. Amazing people. And so now you've got this thing where we can remove all sensory input. And what they found is the brain and the nervous system get a rest. So to me, it's kind of like fasting. Like, now we understand that when you fast, it's giving your digestive system a break. Our digestion could work 24 hours a day if we needed to. If you're just constantly eating, your digestion will continuously work. But we know now that, like, when you're fasting, you're letting that system rest, and there's benefits to that. It's the same way for the mind and the nervous system. If we're constantly stimulated and we've got social media and TV and all this stuff, and we're working longer hours, our brains and our nervous system are working overtime. And so in a float tank, you pause and quiet all of that noise for 1 hour. And what comes out is we've seen a 30 to 40% reduction in cortisol levels. They've measured this in studies. So cortisol are your stress hormones. You immediately get a huge drop in that. You get a boost of serotonin and dopamine. So your happy chemicals, you get a boost of those. And so we call it the post-float glow. When people come out of a float tank, they just feel happier, less stressed. Not always the first time. That's why I always say, like, go in and have fun the first time. Get your body comfortable with the fact that you're laying in water, because your instinct. It took me 4 floats before I like enjoyed the experience, because the first time I'm like stiff as a board in there, because I have this instinct that I have to keep my head out of the water.
Yeah.
So I'm like holding my head up, my body's stiff because I don't feel like I can just relax. But it got easier each time, and by the 4th one, I went in there. My body recognized that I was in this space. I felt safe. And so as soon as like all of my muscles relaxed to where there was like 0 muscle tension, I almost felt my brain just go like, and it just switched off. And then your nervous system slows down. And I got to reach that point of where I felt like I was floating in space and there's no thought and just peace. And I have ADHD. I have insomnia. And so I had never experienced mental peace and quiet ever in my life. And in a float tank, the 4th time I did it, about halfway in, I got to experience that and see that. And that's when I understood what meditation and mindfulness was. And that started me down the journey of like, oh, I can actually do this. Because before that, it's like meditation, like I'm just going to sit there and quiet my mind. It didn't even make any sense because I couldn't experience that in my daily life. Like that was just not a reality for me. But when you take away all the stimulus and you pull away all those triggers that can make, trigger thoughts and ideas and all this stuff. And I was relaxed enough in there. You drop into a theta state. So that we're talking about those brainwave patterns again. They've actually measured that people can drop into a theta state within minutes in a float tank once they're comfortable and they're over that hump. And you just can't achieve that anywhere else unless you practice meditation for a decade. So it's kind of a solution to that problem that we have in society everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the problem. That's where we're all stuck, right? Is we're all overstimulated. We've got our phones. We're on them constantly. I'm on mine all the time. You're not on your phone. You're on your computer. You're on some sort of device. Or you play video games. My wife loves her VR. My wife's crazy. So she loves her VR. She'll play it late into the night, and then she thinks she can go to sleep. Yeah. And it's like, well, your brain's on. That's the problem. That's why you didn't sleep last night. But we're all that way. Even if you try and pull away from that, you have to consciously make an effort to not be engaged in those things.
Yep.
Because they're so readily accessible and required, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I find myself needing services like what you guys provide, because it again, going back to, I had to get out of my house to really relax, right? I had to go someplace to relax because there's so many stimulants at the house. I'd done a hypnotherapy session with my buddy of mine, Bill Moyer.
That's cool.
And it was crazy because I'm an ornery person. I love conflict. I love when things are all jacked up, right? It's fun to some degree. But it was funny because one thing that I really know that bothered me was when he would tell me to relax, it angered me more than when I'd gotten there. I tensed up more. Yeah. I was grinding my teeth. I feel my muscles in my arms and my legs and my body just, triggering. And that's kind of something that always kind of stuck with me, where every now and then I'll think back to that experience and I'm like, man, it's so hard just to relax.
Yeah.
And outside of everything else, whether it's muscle recovery or joint recovery or whatever else, it's like just relaxing. It's worth these experiences. It's worth coming to Evolve or to float, because we're bombarded by things. It's almost like we're under a constant attack of our mental health. Constantly.
It is, yeah.
And you have to treat that like you would treat other things in your life, whether it's exercise, whether it's eating better or checking the mail. You have to make efforts to not fucking go crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea that, like, you know, the best way to do it would be to develop a life that's stress-free and you have work that you love and enjoy and you know, there's no conflict with your family.
A wife that doesn't burn pizza. There you go.
That's not a reality for most of us. Like, good or bad, our society is what we have to exist in, and we have to, you know, it's harder and harder to get by financially, so we're having to work longer hours. And there's also, I think there's an American element to that. Like, I love this country, and we get shit done. We create stuff. We invent things. It's amazing. But we've also created a society where we work a lot. We work long hours. We don't take vacations. My dad didn't take a vacation when I was a kid. Man, we went to Balmorhea from Odessa for a weekend, and he did that his whole life until he died. Yeah. And so that's what we do to ourselves. So yeah, I love the idea that, you know, you have a peaceful, quiet life and you go off into the woods and you meditate. But that ain't real for a lot of us. So
majority.
We have these tools, and they're tools. You know, there's other things you need to do. You can practice breath work at home. I think breath work is the most powerful thing that we don't talk about in Western culture. But if you need a jump start, for me, the float tank is like, I don't have to float all the time now, because that showed me the path. That showed me, okay, this is what a quiet mind sounds like. Sometimes when I'm laying in bed and I can't sleep, I pretend I'm in a float tank, because I can recall this place of tranquility, and then I can get back there. And I think most people have never seen that.
Like you said, you had never had that experience before.
Never.
And so
I didn't even know that I had an experience like that. That was like, what? Oh, this is what calm feels like?
Yeah. No, and it's crazy, because I think that goes for all of us.
Yeah.
Like, we think we know what it feels like to be relaxed, but we've never actually experienced it. You know, and you know, there's different things, there's different ways to experience those, and these are other avenues that people can explore. And what's cool, what you just said, is once you realized what that felt like, you were able to replicate it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
I mean, you know, if we're honest, like, what we use to relax most commonly is we have a drink. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm not against it. I love, you know, a great bourbon, but it's not good for you, you know, and if you do too many, you know, we all done stupid shit before. So
sure.
That's a Band-Aid, I think, in our society. And, you know, again, nothing wrong with that, but it has a lot of negative consequences. And so giving people some other tools to help them find that peace and just be happier in their lives. Sometimes I totally agree. Getting out of your house and going and doing something that helps you feel good is really important, if there's not another way that you can get there.
You know, it's funny, because I equate my experience yesterday mentally to riding a motorcycle. I haven't ridden in forever. We used to ride all the time.
Me too.
But it was funny, because when I rode a motorcycle, it's such a dangerous thing to do that you have no option other than to focus on what you're doing immediately.
Right.
And that's where I was yesterday.
Yeah.
I was so uncomfortable. And when I say uncomfortable, don't get me wrong, it's not like it was painful and unbelievable. Right. It wasn't sitting back on the sofa watching 90 Day Fiancé.
Yeah.
Right? I was sitting in a hot sauna and I was sweating. And that's my jam. But, you know, I was in a sauna, or I was, you know, really cold in the cold plunge. And it was similar to the motorcycle experience, where I've got to focus on what I'm doing immediately, because it's so intense.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a better word instead of uncomfortable. It's an intense experience. Yeah. And so all my mind capacity no longer wasn't work. It wasn't bills. It wasn't my wife terrible at cooking. It was what I was doing in the immediate. And that was so awesome.
There's a scientific term for that. It's interoception, which means the awareness of what's happening inside of you. So they've found that when you do things, I know there was one study regarding floating, but it's true for anything. When you do something, breath work is a great example. When you do something where you become more aware of your internal processes, versus where it can be your heartbeat, your breath, even your digestion. When you focus inward on those things, it actually helps manage stress and anxiety, because you're aware of how those you're just more aware of your body and those senses. So interoception is one of those things where you have to be really focused on it, and doing sometimes intense things or really relaxing things can both kind of lend to that. It's even when you're running. So I call it active meditation. So I like to run, and that for me is my meditation, because I have to get out energy. I think it's the same thing with motorcycle, that focus where, maybe sitting in a quiet place doesn't work for all of us, and that's okay. Like whatever it is that pauses that. I also started I started baking during COVID.
Oh, really?
Everybody picked up some kind of a hobby. Everyone I know picked up a hobby during COVID, and I started baking, and I was like, this is weird for me. Like I usually do intense things. Like I like intense stuff, and I realized that it's like you have to be really focused when you're doing that, because if you lose track of where you are, and you're actually like doing things, and I was like, I think that was part of it, because we were super stressed during COVID. We had to shut the spa down for 2 months. Didn't know when it was going to be back open, and so I was running and I was baking things to like occupy my mind during that time. So that active meditation is a very real thing.
So what are you bringing to the county fair for a blue ribbon when you're baking?
I didn't say I was any good at it.
What's your number one deal?
Best thing I've ever.
Please tell me banana nut bread.
No, I got a problem with bananas. Everybody's trying to put bananas in shit. That's not good. I made a Black Forest gâteau cake that was amazing.
Really?
Yeah, that was like the best thing I ever made. But it was so much effort. You had to get this like cherry liqueur from Germany, and you had to soak the cherries, and then you had like 2 different kinds of frosting. And then you had like 3 layers. It was a pain in the ass, but it was good.
Well, I think that's kind of the problem with all the distractions that we have nowadays that we were just talking about, is we no longer make the effort to do tedious, difficult things, and making something like that is tedious and difficult, but the payoff's huge.
Well, it's also like we're not uncomfortable very often.
Right.
Like we go from AC to AC, or in the winter, heated space to heated space. Our bodies aren't challenged at all. It's the same thing. If you're not working out, your body's going to atrophy, and that's where it's some of the science, the physiology, whatever you want to call it, around whether it's cold plunge or heat, is you're stressing your body in small increments, and it has to respond. That's why we get this immune response to it, and I think that's a worthy conversation. It's like if we're just comfortable all the time and we're never making ourselves be uncomfortable, I don't think that's really a good thing. Like we became this whether you want to call it like alpha predator or whatever else, we became the top of the food chain by stretching those limits. So what happens now as a society when everything is so comfortable and easy through technology or whatever else you want to call it, like I think that's why we're seeing so much more disease and all that type of stuff.
I think it contributes to mental health issues too, because, I think we get to the point, and I'm going to use my own experience, for example, is I recently started, I took a kettlebell and some resistance bands to work, because I was like, I need to do something every hour, every 30 minutes, even if it's just a little something. I need to get up out of this chair and I need to do something. And it was years of, hey, I'm mentally stressed, so I'm gonna physically not do anything.
Right.
And that slow, and it slowly starts creeping into where you go, now I'm not just physically taking the day off. Now it's difficult to do the things that I used to do, and so slowly I gradually start introducing, some kettlebell swings, some band work, some body leg squats, and it's something that, and I'm still not great at it, because you'll sit there and before you know, 2 or 3 hours went by, and it's like, oh crap, I need to get up and do something. So, being mindful of that and being able to do that throughout the course of the day, started helping. We talked about my little lower back issues. When COVID happened, I saw DDP yoga, right? So we went and bought it, and it sat there at the house for like 2 or 3 years, whatever it was. And recently we pulled it out and we started doing it. And the stretching alone, I noticed a significant change in my lower back issues.
Hell yeah.
So it's been a big difference. We get away from it from time to time, but we come back to it. And it's the older you get, the more conscious you have to be of what you're doing because you're not 23 anymore, right? You're not just going to jump out of bed and go do whatever the hell you want and then come back and expect to be fine.
I've experienced the same thing. I put flexibility. I don't like the term flexibility. Mobility, like being comfortable in your own body. Like I put stretching and yoga as much of a priority as strength training. Strength training is really important as we get older to prevent, muscle atrophy and muscle loss. But for me, just the way I feel day to day, stretching is like, I'll put that above a workout now because I used to have lower back issues and, it's been sciatica off and on or shoulders and taking 10 or 15 minutes to stretch, limber up, whatever you want to call it. It just goes so much further when you're after 40. It's just so important.
No, you're 100% right. It's funny because I always equate to weight and age, and I've got these two milestones that I won't share with people. But it was like at a certain weight, I was like, I can't do that anymore. And then at a certain age, I was like, I can't do that anymore. And slowly, it's kind of like, okay, well, I probably could. I just have to make the effort to do those things again. Before I get to the point where I can't do them anymore. So it's a conscious thing that I've slowly started to learn. Hey, I need to make these more of a priority than what I used to because I'm getting old. So
yeah, my struggle right now is not getting frustrated by focusing on where I used to be. Because that's an easy trap to fall into, and that's what I've been trying to get out of. Is I haven't been working out the way I was, and right now I'm like, I was powerlifting for a little bit. I got my squat up to like 315. I'm a small guy, so I was like, I think I weighed 150 at the time, 155, and so now when I get back in the gym and I haven't been, maintaining, I'm frustrated because I'm like, I know where I was. But I'm just like, you got to start back wherever you are. Like you got to forgive yourself. You got to say, it doesn't matter, how long I went without doing that shit. It doesn't matter where I'm now. Like I just have to get started where I'm right now. And one of the trainers that comes into the space, we were talking about this idea, and she was like, you just got to move.
Yeah.
And so I don't really tell people like, oh, you got to go do this type of exercise or this or that. It's like, do what you enjoy. Like if you like lifting weights, do that. If you like playing soccer, whatever, just like get out and move. And more what I'm seeing in some of the science also is like it's important to move outside too. It's tough in the summer in Texas. Sure. Like this summer was ridiculous, but sunlight is really important. I'll mention Huberman Lab podcast. I don't know. Is that bad etiquette?
No.
Is that bad etiquette when you're on a podcast to talk about another podcast?
Not at all. I do it all the time.
If I could recommend, like, I really like Huberman because he's a researcher, a scientist,
Say it again.
doctor.
What's his name?
Huberman.
Huberman.
Yeah, the podcast is called the Huberman Lab, and it's really cool because he'll have an episode on a specific like scientific topic that relates to health and wellness generally. And he'll spend about an hour, 2-3 hours on it. Sometimes he'll have guests, and he gets kind of deep into the science, but he doesn't talk down to you. He informs you in a way that makes sense, and it's accessible. Like he does get deep into the science, but he'll break down terms. He won't just say a term that we don't know. He'll like define it. He'll say, okay, this is this mechanism and this is why it works, but then he'll kind of break it down in a way you can understand. So I really enjoy that podcast.
I think that's what's cool about people like that, people like you, people like Tim at Heavy Metal, is that when you're in that circle, you assume everybody knows what you know.
Yeah.
But it's nice when you have people like you guys that can sit there and talk to a novice or sit there and talk to somebody who hasn't experienced these things, because we don't know, right? We don't know what exists. We don't know what doesn't exist. And when you talked about not being able to do what you did when you were younger, that was kind of always my thing with going to see Tim was, I would always go and do what I learned in high school.
Right.
Those are the exercises I know. That's what I'm going to go do. And I constantly got hurt. I constantly tweaked something. And I would stop for 2 weeks, and now I'm starting over.
Right.
And that was one of the bigger, eye openers was, like you said, you got to start with where you're at. Do what you can do and slowly grow. Because when you try and do things in our minds, we're still fully capable. Mentally we might be. Physically, it's not happening. Not right now, not in the immediate. Yeah. But being able to expose yourself to learned people that know stuff, and being able to apply those experiences to yourself to where you can start to increase slowly.
Yeah.
And we live in a world where everything's instant. When you can finally convince yourself, hey, I'm going to go on this journey. It's going to take a long time. It's probably going to take my rest of my life.
Right.
But I'm going to get on it, and I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to progress. And that's huge for folks, because most people are like me. We get up, we go to work. My wife always says, during COVID, how did COVID affect your life? I said, not at all. I said, I hardly ever see anybody. I go home, I go to work, I go to see my family back home. I come back here and I do more work.
Yeah. I
said, it really didn't affect me at all. I'm social within a smaller circle, and I saw them anyway.
Right.
So I'm ignorant to changes in whether it's health and fitness, whether it's mental health, whatever it is. I never expanded that. So here I am slowly trying to get out of my comfort zone to seeing what's available, and because I need to start applying those things back into my life so that I can become more active and in terms of social and all that good stuff. But
I've been trying to use the reward system that we have in our bodies, that dopamine, because every time we do something that feels good, you get dopamine. And if we give ourselves the things that are like the easy dopamine triggers, the sugar, the Instagram, whatever else, if we allow ourselves to have too much of that, and that kind of starts to rule your thought patterns, and then your thought patterns and your habits become centered around that. So I'm trying to mentally trigger dopamine, the reward system, when I do something that's positive. So if I eat a healthy meal that's not as satisfying as like Whataburger, I'll give myself a mental reward. Like I'll actually pause and say, okay, I made the right decision, and this is positive. Because if you just do it and you don't mentally reward yourself, and and by a reward, I mean there's actually a small dopamine surge that will happen, but you have to actually pause and mentally say, like patting yourself on the back. There's a tiny little boost of dopamine you get from that, whereas before you would get it from the food or it could be like a video game or something like that.
And all those things are easily accessible.
Mm-hmm.
They're bad for you, and they're easy to get.
Yeah. And so like I'm trying to see if I can hijack that system by like, okay, I went to the gym and I got there. And so I'll actually like tap my head and I'll be like, okay, dopamine, I made the right decision, and reward myself in that way. And I've noticed that it helps a little bit, because I'm just like, I'm pausing to acknowledge, okay, this is good, and trying to create new habits. It's actually something we're talking about at Evolve, is because biohacking is this whole industry around like, okay, be better, healthier. A lot of times it involves technology. I don't really like the term too much, so we changed it from biohacks to biohabits. We're trying to help people create biohabits, positive habits that can stack to improve their life. So that's part of that conversation.
That's where I fell into that little mental trap, where it was kind of like, hey, I'm going to do something for a few weeks, and I'm going to feel better about myself. And it was interesting, because when I'm consistent with whether it's eating better or exercising regularly, I turn into a snob, right? Because all of a sudden it's like I'm not as soft as I used to be, and now when I see soft people doing the things that I used to do, it irritates the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Because it reminds me that I was that soft, and then every now and then I become that soft again too. But at the same time, there's a little bit of me that and it's kind of a no-brainer to people that experience being uncomfortable, but it's like you get, I guess, the dopamine kick, right? But you also get this idea that I'm more of a bad motherfucker than I thought I was.
Yeah.
You know, and every now and then we have to challenge ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny because my wife's a school teacher, right? So she'll tell me every now and then, man, boys are crazy. And I always tell her, I said, well, 100, 200, thousands of years ago, we're supposed to be crazy, right? Because you're supposed to take a spear and you're supposed to stab a woolly mammoth, you know, while the women stayed home and bore children and farmed or whatever they did. I said, we couldn't be smart, right? We had to be a little bit crazy. So it's nice because when you expose yourself to things that kind of connect with, in a way, this is going to get real macho, but when you connect with kind of like your ancestry of how things used to be done, it makes you feel a different way,
right?
You know, and you start to carry yourself differently, you start to think differently, you start to behave differently. But in the meantime, you're trying to build that mentality in a place where everything's soft and given to you, you know. And it's like, it's so easy to just be lazy. It's just focus on it.
And it's hard to feel, for us normal people, it's hard to feel good day to day because we're on social media and you're on Instagram and you see people doing the most amazing shit on the planet. And how do you not compare yourself to that? You know, the people, these Instagram influencers or these pro athletes where it's their entire job to look beautiful or to perform. And that's in front of us all the time when we're sitting here trying to compare ourselves to that. And you can have that moment where you're like, why should I even try? I'll never be that. And we forget to just focus on our own journey and just say, that's where I'm like, just start, just move. Reframing it for myself personally, like just be happy that you did that thing that's positive, because if we're comparing ourselves to everybody else out there, and usually it's not even the real story, you know, it's the camera angles, it's the airbrushing, it's whatever else. It's the unhealthy diets that can actually be too extreme, that they're destroying their bodies to try and get so cut. That's not real life. And the rest of us, we have jobs and all of these things. There's genetics, all these things that we can, and we just have to figure out a way to get focused back on our own personal journey, being content with ourselves in whatever form we are in, and then just try and be better the next day. And that's all it. Like forget the past and the mistakes that you made. Focus on today. Try and be like, it's cheesy, but the 1% better is so true. Like just be 1% better, and after 100 days you're 100% better. I don't know if that math is real, but you know what I mean. And with social media, it's so hard to be focused on being content with ourselves right now when we have all of this stuff in front of us.
One thing that I was kind of getting on, I kind of got off track earlier, but one thing that I was kind of alluding to earlier was the whole time frame, right? A lot of times I'd like to say, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks or I'm going to do this for 6 months. And one thing that I've noticed that has helped me mentally to kind of be more consistent is just telling myself, this is just what I do now.
Yeah.
Right? I may not do it every single day. I may miss a couple of days here or there, but this is what I do now.
Right.
You know, I got a kettlebell at work. I got my resistance bands. I got stuff at the house. You know, I'm going to do some swings during 90 Day Fiance. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it really helps me to not put a time frame on things.
Right.
Because it gives me a time to quit.
Yeah.
Right. It says, okay, well, when you reach December, you can stop.
Right.
Where when I convince myself that this is just something that I do now, you know, there's no time frame on it. It goes back to, and I'm sure people have been doing it forever. I'm just late to the game, where it's your lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I tell myself daily, this is what I do, right?
Yeah.
And it really has helped me maybe not be as consistent as I should be, but at the same time, I don't go, man, I didn't do it, so I'm not gonna do it anymore.
Right.
It's like, oh no, I'm gonna do it because this is just part of what I do now.
Yeah.
And so that's helpful. But
no, I totally hear that, and that's what they always say about fad diets. Is the problem with a diet that's like really intense and you do it for 2 weeks. Well, it's just during that 2 weeks, and if you're not doing something that's gonna be long term, it's not gonna be consistent. Then you're not gonna see the changes in your life that you want to see. It's just gonna be like you'll lose the 10 pounds and then you gain it back, and yeah.
Well, Jeremy, I think we covered just about everything.
We covered a lot. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you having me on. This was fun.
Man, I appreciate you being on. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find Evolve, where they can find Float. Give them all your information.
Yeah, I'll just do the websites. That's easy. You can find us on social media. But for Float, it's floatsa, like sanantonio.com. So we have float tanks there. We also have massage, infrared saunas, and a salt cave. So you breathe in salt. It's actually really good for your lungs. So that facility is over at Fredericksburg Road and 410. We've been open for 7 years. I love that place. It's a gorgeous facility. We're really proud of it. So floatsa.com, and then Evolve is actually the full name you got right. I appreciate that. Evolve Human Optimization Labs. It's kind of a mouthful, but the website is evolvehumanlabs.com. Anybody that wants to check that out, you never have to have an appointment. You can just walk in and say, I want a tour. Just come see it, come experience it, because the idea of these 20 services and you just go in and play around is kind of hard to wrap your head around. So just come in, you're going to get a warm greeting, and just come and see what it looks like, see if it makes any sense for you. And we're not going to pressure you. There's no obligation, but we want to help people improve their lives. And we also are on a mission with guys like Austin and Nick to take San Antonio athletes and help them compete at a national level. We don't have a lot of resources here for athletes, and so there's something else we wanted to do in that facility. You don't have to be an athlete to enjoy Evolve, but we're working with some amazing fighters and power lifters, and we're trying to help them compete nationally just as a part of our community.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time, brother, and we'll have to do this again here in the future.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Are you going to Renee's deal on October 7th?
Yes, we will be there. Yeah,
okay.
The battle.
Yeah, Battle Alamo City.
Oh, and I almost forgot. We're going to make an announcement here.
Oh, go for it. Have at it.
we are now franchising Evolve. We just signed our first franchise in Dallas. So there will be an Evolve coming to Dallas. I think we can get it open this year. So look for that in December. If anybody knows anybody in Dallas, give them a heads up. We're coming there. And then hopefully next year we're shooting for Bernie right outside of San Antonio. We think that's going to happen. And then we're trying to get an Austin location going. So we're on the goal with this franchise to completely change health and wellness industry, make it accessible, take the elitism out of it. Make it accessible for people to come in financially, and actually, removing the appointments, more people can enjoy these modalities. So we're on a mission to make this a national movement.
Awesome, brother. Oh, I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for the business, and I'm excited for the folks that get to experience it because, like I said, it was worth it, and I'm excited to go back another time.
All right, we'll see you there tomorrow.
Appreciate it, Jeremy. Yes, sir. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.